Ready to get started with this meeting of the Airlake Airport Advisory Committee, June 13th. We will start with welcome and introductions. So welcome everyone that's here. And we'll start with introductions. First, we'll start with who's in the room, and then we will move to who's online. We'll just start on the far end there.
All right, good afternoon. Krista Jeck with the Lakeville Chamber of Commerce.
Dan Wolbert, I'm a pilot and own an airplane and part of a hangar.
Tom Fitzhenry, I represent as a co-chair and the users group.
John Bermel, I am a co-chair and Lakeville City Council.
Tina Goodroad, Community Development Director, City of Lakeville.
Steve Getter.
And I'm Pat Moynihan. I'm a pilot and I own a hangar at the airport. I'm also the RAC representative to the MAC.
And then over there.
Jennifer.
Hello, I'm Jennifer Lewis. I'm the MAC's Community Relations Coordinator, and welcome everybody.
Good afternoon, Sam Seafelt, Airport Manager at the Lakeville Airport, and I just wanted to mention Adam just texted me, he's on his way.
Okay.
Kerry Metcalf, Assistant Manager for Community Relations.
Okay, and then...
I'm Beth Alex, who's at Eureka Township.
And then for you gentlemen, can you just come up to the microphone and introduce yourselves real quick?
My name is Nick Motters, and I'm a pilot at the Airlake Airport. I'm Al Oliwin. I'm also a pilot at Airlake.
And is there anyone online that should introduce themselves?
I'm Katie Burnjohn, Farmington City Council.
You're not Holly, so we can pull
Is
that.
that it?
We have a person named Christopher.
Chris Gardner, sitting in on behalf of Met Council.
And Aaron Labrie. And one other person named Kyle Fisher. And then we have our meeting secretary, Kalai Verdea.
All right, thank you. Agenda discussion and information. Is there any items on the agenda that the committee would like to talk about? Okay. Number 3, consent items. We'll take these both as a package. The consent items are approval of the agenda and the approval of the March 14th minutes, a copy of which was distributed. Is there anybody that would like to pull either of those items to talk about them? All right, hearing none, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second. Jim Moynihan and Dan Wolbert. So all in favor of approving the consent items, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? And those are approved. Our next section is public comment. This is an opportunity from anyone from the public, either virtually or in the audience, to make a comment up to 3 minutes. Is there anyone that would like to exercise their ability to make a public comment? Okay, hearing none. Our next item is radio frequency change update. And I'm going to have my co-chair, Tom Fitzhenry, introduce our speaker.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to introduce Nick Motters. He's been diligently working on finding a new frequency for Airlake called CTAF to make it easier for pilots to understand the other pilots. Nick.
Thank you, Co-Chair Fitzhenry, and thank you, Commission, for allowing me to appear before you. Agenda item number 5 does say radio frequency change update. I think another name for that could be an opportunity to make a major aviation safety improvement at the Airlake Airport. The radio frequency in question is the Common Traffic Advisory Frequency, and now that we've said Common Traffic Advisory Frequency enough, its real name, with all the pilots, is CTAF. And so if you'll indulge me, we'll just consider this thing CTAF for the rest of the conversation. The Metropolitan Airports Commission is the FCC license holder for the Airlake CTAF. So consequently, I come to you as a way to advance this concept. CTAF service is available at all non-towered airports in the United States. There are 20,000 airports in the lower 48. 50 of them have control towers. And you're probably thinking, for 19,950, it's bedlam, but it's not. The CTAF allows pilots to communicate amongst themselves at an airport and coordinate their activities by informing others where they're going and how they're going to do it. And others hear that and say, oh, he's there and he's going and he's fast and I'll accommodate him. And luckily, happily, and safely, all of this works out really good. There are 7 radio frequencies allocated by the Federal Communications Commission and the FAA for this CTAF purposes. Now, we've just said that there's 19,500 airports sharing these 7 frequencies. If you've got a radio in an airplane that's 1,000 feet above the ground, you can imagine that with a 1,000-foot tower, or the airplane transmitter being 1,000 feet above the ground, it's going to have a pretty big range, about 100 miles, maybe a little less. So if you're getting the idea that there's a considerable amount of perhaps frequency congestion, overlap, a lot of squealing and hollering from the radio waves beating against each other, you're right. In the Airlake Airport, there are 8 nearby airports that share the same frequency that Airlake has. Airlake in the radio spectrum is on 123.0 megahertz. Now, these neighbors that we have are the likes of Albert Lea, Princeton, New Ulm, Alexandria, Redwood Falls, Fort Dodge, Mason City, and Spencer, Iowa. New Ulm is particularly interesting because it is a reliever airport for the Mankato State University Aviation Program. There is always somebody from Mankato at New Ulm in the pattern making announcements on 123.0, as they should. That's good. The system works. Now, what I would like to try to do, but I do not have the skill to do, is to be able to present to you what it's like in an airplane in the pattern when it's a good flying day and there's something happening at Airlake and 8 other airports. I can't do that. Try something else. Something that, even though my experience in this, the people that were involved in it are now in their 50s, but that's basically teenage children and automobiles. So picture, if you will, you're in your very best automobile, and you've got your teenager who has just gotten through driver's training, and you're going to go for a ride because you're the responsible adult and that person can exercise the features of their driving permit. We're also going to go do parallel parking. So you're going to get in the right seat of the car. And when you get in there, you're going to notice there's no brake pedal. And with this opportunity for you to offer advice during this parallel parking thing, to make it more like the airplane and in the pattern at Airlake, we're going to turn on the radio, we're going to find a talk station, and we're going to turn it up loud. And now we're going driving. I don't know about you, but I'd be horrified. Oh, by the way, you got to listen to the radio because important information is going to take place. It's going to come from that, and you want to hear it. So if I've got that scenario in your mind, you've got some idea of what it's like in an airplane at Airlake on a really nice flying day where it's nice and everywhere else around here, and you've got an awful lot of distractions and opportunities to be disoriented. For this thing, would you think that it would be a good idea if we could do a couple of things like, A, turn off the radio? That's going to quiet things down. But from an airplane standpoint, would it be better if we could, in fact, eliminate the, not interference, but the conversations that we're hearing from those 8 other airports? And in fact, yes, we can. It's easy, it's simple, and there's not going to be any cost. I think it's the ideal solution with all of those factors. Investigating the 7 CTAF frequencies within 100 miles of Airlake, we find there is one frequency that does not have any other airports on it. It's literally a clear channel. It's unused. And how did I get that? Using the internet and going into fcc.gov and then going into licensing and databases and then the general menu for anybody that wants to chase around and check my work. You can do a license search on 123.075. Remember, the Airlake frequency is 123.000. This is 123.075. And you'll find there is, in fact, in Duluth, a station. In fact, it's at a hospital. If you were to do the same search in Wisconsin, you'd find that there's one airport in Racine, Wisconsin, which is about 400 miles away. There are no licensees in Iowa. So basically, there's nobody on that frequency. Here's where the Airlake Airport Advisory Commission comes into action, and a recommendation to MAC to change the CTAF frequency to 123.075 is, I guess, my main message or my main request, my hope that you would do this. Now, taking this process a little bit further, is this an established procedure? Do people go around and do these things? Can you change frequencies? Well, yes, you can. In fact, the Aircraft Owners and Pilots Association some time ago published a document on how to do this. And why would you want to do this? Well, for all of the things that we just discussed as far as the improvement in aviation safety. And as I go back to my first flying experiences in 1957, there weren't any common traffic advisory frequencies then. In fact, I had a fair number of hours before I even got to fly in an airplane and had a radio. So things are much better now. We have the radio aid as a safety communicator. As these frequencies have come along, the FCC and the FAA has added them, other airports have said, you know, I'm getting tired of listening to those guys over there. I want to be on something else. So now that we're up to 7 frequencies. In 1960, there was 1. Now we've got 7. So how does the commission make the improvement? I would ask you that you recommend to the MAC that they make the change to 123.075. Are there any questions?
I have a comment.
Yes, sir.
I think it's a great suggestion. I like your presentation. I do have a follow-up question. Have you looked into the clutter on 122.8?
I don't live there. The short answer is no.
Okay.
I'm only interested selfishly in Airlake.
Okay. I was up the other day in that channel. I don't know if you guys can.
Oh, yeah, I know it.
Address that. I think that's worse than 123.00. I was up, we shot an approach into Faribault. It's just constant chatter. And I think it's completely.
Well, I would hate to say that I'm the modern version of Don Quixote and I'm not happy unless I'm tilting some windmill. But I am, in fact, working or trying to make some headway on what you're talking about. And I have found that the FAA and the FCC have 18 frequencies that are available to add to these 7. Trying to get the FAA to even answer the phone and talk about these, even to get the AOPA government relation person interested in talking to it, or even getting the lady at EAA to have a concept of what I'm talking about, I'm not making any headway. So I hope that you and I could get together, and of course if the commission wants to get in on this, we can help solve for us, or the 122.8 problem.
Yeah, I'd be willing to work with you. I guess my thought was maybe we could do a twofer. You know, Airlake makes sense.
One for and get Airlake solved, and then we'll get on that.
Sounds like it's very possible. Again, I appreciate your presentation. The 122.8 though.
122.8 was the original frequency. When that showed up in 1960 something, whoa, is this ever great? It's grown.
We had a hard time getting a slot to make our calls. It was that busy.
Yeah. And Airlake is equally as bad on a nice day.
Nick, I have a question. So what training do new pilots get on radio use? In terms of be brief, plan your transmission, say what you're going to say and be done. Do they get training on that and how to use radio?
Yeah.
Okay.
Say it quickly, say it clearly, say it concisely, and shut up.
I think I have a comment on that as well, and they should be getting from their flight instructors instruction on exactly what was just said. I think when we listen on 123.0, we do hear a lot of frequency congestion. And what I hear, you mentioned Mankato State students, there's a lot of non-standard radio phraseology that come out of their aircraft, from what I hear.
English as second language.
Not even that, just, you know, I don't care when you're leaving a VFR pattern that you're at 2,500 feet, you're climbing to 3,500 and going to New Ulm. Yeah. That's irrelevant to me. And it's not standard radio phraseology. I also see within the pattern at Lakeville a lot of pilots trying to become controllers. And this is, in a lot of cases, the younger CFIs that are teaching and flying out there quite often, and they're trying to tell other airplanes what to do. They're trying to point out other airplanes. All you have to really do is be quiet, and I'll make my calls where the FAA tells me to make the calls. You don't have to ask if 340 Quebec, are you on the frequency? Well, I just made a call about 2 minutes ago, and I'm going to make one when I turn base. So I think there's an education piece, as you mentioned, that, you know, we're not going to change the Mankato State curriculum, although I'm planning on stopping there at Oshkosh and asking some questions. But I think within the Airlake community, we can certainly encourage standard radio phraseology.
Right.
I have a question. So you said, why wouldn't we? That's my question is, what is the downside to changing this? Is it costs nothing,
Correct.
And it's available. What is the downside? Is there one?
I'm not aware of one.
Okay.
And I'll just make a quick comment on what he said. Yeah, 122.8 is terrible. I think, is that Lake Elmo?
That too.
Yeah, I'm talking MAC. So
The Airlake's number, but then they changed it.
So yes, we need it at Lakeville, but MAC may want to look at this. Don't take the one we're looking at, but you know, for Lake Elmo might have an opportunity too, because when you get up in the air, 122.8 is 122.7, 122.8 around here is very popular. It's like the old chat line on the phone, you know, or
Party line.
Party line.
party line. So thank you, Nick, for presenting that. I don't know if there's any other questions.
Yeah, any other questions or comments? Otherwise, yes, thank you.
So what would be the next step?
Yes.
I mean, that's my question. I mean, do we just ask Sam to make a proposal to his management, or is there something different?
I don't know your process.
Our process, I mean, that's what I'm asking you. What is the process?
Could we make it a resolution or?
Well, we are
You had an
We can
AOPA
make a
document.
recommendation.
We'll ask for a protocol from them.
This is what the MAC information technology person follow. That guy didn't, or when I take a look through the licenses, or the license for all the radio frequencies the Metropolitan Airport Commission has, the gentleman, well, his name is not important, but I've got the license here somewhere, that they know how to do this. And I think they need to be asked. And I think stressing the aviation safety improvement on this, I would hope that the MAC would think, yeah, it's a great idea, and let's do it.
So, I mean, in terms of our group, I'm feeling like there's some consensus that this would be a good idea for somebody to implement whatever the process is.
Absolutely. Can suggest a motion.
Yep.
I'd like to present a motion that Jennifer and Sam investigate this further. If there's no reason for this not to proceed, that we approve the change. They can spearhead the project and report back.
I would second that motion.
Okay, so we have a motion, we have a second. Is there any other discussion on this before we do a vote? Okay, so all in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay, so that motion passes. And is it clear what we're doing here?
Yeah, no, I can definitely take this back, and we can make sure to have an agenda item at the next meeting. I can update the commission on what I found out.
Excellent, thank you.
Thank you for a great presentation, Nick.
Very nice.
Thank you.
All right.
1 second. Can you repeat who the first and second was on that?
The first was Dan Wolbert, and the second was...
Steve Gatter.
Okay, thank you.
Could I offer another suggestion?
Sure.
Everyone here that flies has dealt with Mankato State. There might be some value in this body addressing that issue directly with the Director of Flight Operations or Instruction at Mankato State in terms of phraseology. And I think that would go back to Sam, as the airport manager, and just say in very polite, tactful terms that the phraseology, radio phraseology is not consistent. That's a CFI issue. We deal with it a lot. To your point, sir, I don't care if someone's going to leave the pattern, they're going to go see their grandma. It doesn't matter. There's a lot of overtalk. So I think that, in my opinion, it could be appropriate for this body to address the school.
Okay, duly noted. I can do what I can there. I can't make any promises that it will have change, but yeah, I can do what I can.
Yep. I think conversation would be a good place to start.
Yeah, I would agree. Thank you for the suggestion.
Yep.
All right, anything else on the radio frequency change update? Otherwise, we'll move on to item number 6, Sam, airport manager update.
Okay, well, good afternoon. Appreciate the time here. Just wanted to update on some of the progress that we've had since the last meeting on our construction projects over the summer. So the South Taxiway Edge Light project, as well as the replacement runway end identifier lights, is expected to start on June 21st. Now that's already been pushed back 5 days from the original start date, so we'll see how that goes, but we're preparing to have no closures, construction supervisor out there to maintain, contractors are maintaining separation from any aircraft taxiing through the Bravo area. So June 21st, and there will be surveyors out starting tomorrow in preparation for next Friday's start of the project. The runway crack seal, we received bids, I think about the same day as the last ALAC meeting, and project was awarded. We're anticipating the construction to start sometime in July. We don't have any firm dates, but we are targeting to have the contractors do it during the night. So, as well as surface markings will be repainted following the crack seal project for the entire airport. Once we get exact dates, I'll be able to communicate to the pilot, through the newsletter and email blasts, as well as via NOTAM as early as I can, which dates those will be that we will have closures during the overnight hours. But we're doing that to decrease any impact to anybody's flight operation, and then maintain the airport open during daytime. Any questions about those two projects? Okay. Some other things, we are continuing to do the design for the aircraft maintenance building, or not aircraft, but the airport maintenance building where John Hooglam works. And we're anticipating a spring construction project for that, as well as some drainage issues that we're having on the south side. We're working closely this summer with Adam and Aloft Aviation as we mitigate some of the drainage issues on the south side. Other than that, we don't have any firm progress on the runway extension EA, environmental assessment, but we do have some good news. Our CEO Ricks and COO Furman, they have a scheduled meeting with the FAA's Great Lakes Regional Administrator in Chicago, and our EA is on the agenda to talk about, to try to spearhead getting that moving. So I hope to bring some good news to you guys on the EA shortly. Any questions?
When's that meeting?
That meeting is
Today, wasn't it?
today, yeah.
Okay. This morning.
I have one question. So I know Adam has a problem on the south side. There's a lot of other hangars that have a problem on the south side with drainage and that. Are you interested in looking at any of that? I mean, during heavy rains, some of them could have a float plane taxi out, so.
Exactly.
Yes, there's definitely standing water issues on the south side. As of right now, the project we have is more focused on what's going on to the east of the parking lot that was put in for the big hangar. The rest of that, there are future plans, but we don't have any plans to be able to do anything on that this summer.
Okay.
But we are aware of it, and we're looking into solutions.
So it happens on the north side too. I was going to add that. Where CAP and where my hangar is, it just nowhere for the water to go. As you know, it's mostly clay underneath that couple inches of dirt. It'd be nice if they decide to mitigate that too, because there's a few rows there that we're all pushing the water out. And if it goes out of my hangar, it goes in the next one, and that it just has nowhere to go. And it's been that way for years. So yeah, I see Pat nodding his head too. So it'd be nice to find out if we could mitigate it on the north end too.
Actually, I think it's gotten worse. I've built my hangar in '85, I think it was.
Yeah.
And it was dry for the first 10 or more years, maybe 15. And now I have standing water in the wintertime.
Yeah.
It melts and flows in. I can't get rid of it.
Yeah, you just can't put it anywhere. And I'm sure if you put a sump pump in, it's just going to come back. So there's nothing we can really do unless something's done on Mac's behalf. So.
Yeah, we have a similar issue on Lima Lane.
Yep, drainage issues everywhere.
Yep.
We do have consultants looking into a lot of different issues, but I'll make sure I don't let them forget about the north side, that it may be getting worse over the years. So
yeah,
we can try to look into that as well.
Thank you.
The last thing I wanted to mention, I was able to meet with Commissioner Eilers yesterday for a tour, and I just wanted to put the invitation out to everybody else. If you wanted to tour some of the facilities that you might not have seen yet or are not familiar with, in addition to this Airport 101 for the commissioners that we're going to talk about, reach out anytime, and I can get you out to drive around the airport. Thank you.
Go ahead.
Okay. I do have a question on the EA that has been simmering for I don't know how many years now, 6, 5 years. Is there a stop date? Is there like a date certain where this will be complete?
I don't have that information at this time. No, I honestly can't tell you if there is a stop date or not. All I can say is we're continuing to push forward, and just by the fact that we have our CEO and COO pushing the point today, this morning, I feel like that's a good sign of some progress that we haven't had in the past couple years.
Right. Any other questions? Next item is the aircraft noise complaints and operations summary for Q1.
You want to do the rate increase?
Oh, yeah. So Sam, going back to the previous item, the rate increase.
Nope, sorry.
Yeah. I saw that.
Yeah, just a quick update. The administration for the reliever department held a couple public meetings for any tenant that was at any of the airports to come and learn about that. Basically, they presented their formulas on how they got to some of the rate increases that the commercial tenants mostly will see. There was actually a proposal for a decrease for just normal storage tenants from 3.3% per year down to 3%. So I think that's why none of the storage tenants were able to make those meetings, because there was a decrease. But yeah, and that's just a way to even out where the increases have been going over the past, I don't know how many years it's been since the last increase, but there is more information coming out on this. There's a public hearing currently in the works of being scheduled. In order for an ordinance to be changed, you have to have a public hearing. So more information to come via newsletter on that.
And one of the proposals was to drop the sublease fee. So the sublease fee, you're a hangar owner, you rent a sublease space to somebody else. There was a fee involved with that. That's proposed to go away. It's part of the ordinance that they're looking at changing. So as a part of the RAC committee, we were just shown the overview of kind of the process that was followed. I guess to me personally, I thought the process was fair and it was done diligently. It wasn't haphazard. It was based on as much data as you can when you're forecasting the future. So it seemed to be a reasonable look at making sure that the airports, reliever airports in general, were moving towards self-sufficiency and not putting all the burden on any one factor of the whole system. So anyway, the details are still coming out. Like Sam mentioned, the public hearing and all of that. But I'd encourage everybody to look at it with an open mind and just look at what was done and how it was done, and see if you agree that the process was done with diligence and good intent for everyone. So.
Right. Any more questions or comments about that, or else we'll move on to the complaint report?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The Metropolitan Airports Commission collects aircraft noise complaint information through various means. Basically, in any form that someone submits information to us, we will document that. 24 hours a day, we have a hotline available for people to leave information about particular aircraft operations. And then the MAC will take that complaint information and try to match it up with specific aircraft operations based on the details that are provided to us. We will respond to complaints whenever we're asked to. We generally will respond through the method that was communicated with us. So if somebody left a phone call, then we would generally call them back. If they left an email, we would generally email them back. But again, we pretty much will respond to whoever and however somebody is requesting us to look into something. We use our flight tracker data for investigating the complaints. We also make all of our flight tracking information available through that tool at macnoms.com. Folks can use that tool to look up details about operations or just get current runway use. It's a busy airspace around the Twin Cities and lots going on. So this has been a very good tool for people to use as a reference, and we're getting a lot of great feedback about that, particularly right now. I don't know if you're aware, we do have some runway closures at MSP, which is making the airspace a little bit challenging. In Q1 of 2024, all the runways were available at MSP and at all of the other MAC airports. And so we will take all of the complaint information and produce a quarterly report for the reliever airports. We publish that on our website. This here is data for Q1 2024, representing the number of complaints we received. And it also compares how much complaint activity came through this year compared to last year for the same period for 2024. There's only one complaint, and there were no complaints last year for Q1, so that's a 100% increase. But the complaint that we did receive was a household near the northern Twin Cities area, so it's just south of Anoka County Blaine Airport, not in the vicinity of the Airlake Airport. And that's also one of the benefits of the flight tracker is people can look up and actually pinpoint which airport they want to tag their complaint to. So even though this particular household lives in the northern metro area, they were able to identify that a helicopter operation was disturbing to them, and that helicopter originated from Airlake Airport, which is why that complaint is here. If you look at the column chart at the bottom, you'll see that we show the monthly totals of complaints going back 3 years. So it's this year compared to last year and then the year before that. And relatively speaking, if you look across the year and each month, we really don't have a high volume of complaints that come through for Airlake Airport. Airlake is actually one of the lowest complaint level airports in the MAC system. But there are times of the year when people are more sensitive to aircraft operations, and coincidentally when aircraft operations volume does increase, which is generally going to be spring and summer months. So when you look at the blue columns that stand out in that chart, you can see those are complaint volumes from 2022 in April, May, and June, and those are related to flight training for the most part. At this point, I'll turn it over to Sam. He'll talk about the actual aircraft operation volume.
Yep, as you can see on the chart, so quarter by quarter from last year, Q1, looked like we have a 1,650 operation increase this year. So number of factors that could be the better weather at the beginning of the year, and possibly more fair weather flying for transient attendants, flight school. So yeah, so just an increase of operations, not a whole lot more nighttime. Actually, there's a few less, but a lot more operations and not an increase in noise complaints. So I think that's a good sign.
Right, and any questions about that report? Otherwise, we will move on to the noise abatement recommended practices item.
Okay, thank you. I have a very short presentation that just gives you an overview of the work that we've been doing for updating the noise abatement information for Airlake Airport. When we all met, when this committee met in March, I did share with you a draft of what we were proposing for the update to include, and the ALAC work plan does include the number one item to review the noise abatement plan and pilot guide. So before you today in your packet, you do have the final version of the what we're proposing the update to include. Just briefly, I'll say we are changing the title of that document. The document was called Noise Abatement Plan. In your packet, you'll see the title is Noise Abatement Recommended Practices. I'm going to propose again that we change the title to Noise Abatement Information, and that is consistent with how the Federal Aviation Administration is standardizing their terminology for these voluntary measures at every airport that has a noise abatement plan. So I know the packet says noise abatement recommended practices, but in your motion today, I'm hoping that you will also agree to change the title to noise abatement information instead of that recommended practices title. And if you don't like noise abatement information for the title, another recommendation from the Federal Aviation Administration would be to title the document as Noise Abatement Best Practices. In the plan itself, we do have some fairly standard things. We talk about the takeoff and approach. These are recommendations that the MAC is suggesting for pilots to consider when they're operating their aircraft. Everything in this document is voluntary, so there's no rules per se, but these are suggestions and things that we are asking pilots to do to help keep the noise complaint level down, to help keep the airport operating in a standardized way. We are following the recommendations from both NBAA and AOPA. Both of those pilot organizations do have recommendations for noise abatement measures. The traffic pattern is another section in the document, and we are saying that we would like to keep the noise abatement, the traffic pattern altitude to be 1,000 feet for piston aircraft, 1,500 feet for turboprop aircraft. And then we are also suggesting that pilots try to avoid stop and goes. We'd like full stop taxi back or avoid touch and go operations during nighttime hours. Those are two highly recommended measures that we'd like pilots to follow. And the maintenance run-up area is another place that we've updated the document. In your packet and on the screen, you'll see there's a map of the airport. The purple box represents where we are suggesting the new location to be for maintenance run-ups. There's a difference between a maintenance run-up and a pre-departure run-up. A pre-departure run-up is a fairly quick last-minute check before the aircraft takes off, but a maintenance run-up is more of a high-power, longer duration engine testing that takes place after maintenance maybe was conducted or just to help troubleshoot something that might be ongoing with the aircraft. So the purple box that shows up on the map is an area that we're recommending for just the maintenance run-ups to take place. Typically, a pre-departure run-up, for folks who might not be familiar, that usually takes place at that end of the runway that you're actually going to use for departure. So there's that is another difference. And then the last piece that I'll touch on here is we're creating a Fly Neighborly Guide. And that Fly Neighborly Guide is a concise representation of what the measures are in the noise abatement recommended practices. So the Fly Neighborly Guide is intended to be concise and easy reference, one page, just a quick reference for pilots to use both while they're operating the aircraft, but also refer to in their flight planning process. So what you see on the screen here is what that Fly Neighborly Guide will be. But before we can actually create the Fly Neighborly Guide, we have to have a finalization of the actual recommended practices. So what we're asking you all today to do is accept the documentation that we've provided in the noise abatement information and recommend that we move forward with that. Of course, we are certainly open to any suggestions or questions that you might have at this time.
Thank you for the information. Is there any questions, comments?
Have you landed on your final title?
I would like it to be noise abatement information, if this group agrees.
So, yeah. Ultimately, what I'm going to do is ask for a motion to accept the noise abatement document, changing the name to noise abatement information, and with the highlight of that, the run-up, whatever you call it, section.
So I have a question or a comment. So calling it information, kind of like it's just general information, and I understand that these are voluntary compliance. So from my point of view, calling it more of best practices is a more of a polite suggestion, not so much a directive, but a little bit more than, hey, here's some information. I personally, I would prefer that.
Yeah, I was going to say something along those lines as well, that best practices implies some type of action, even if it's voluntary action, as opposed to information. So I think that would be, from a title standpoint and what we expect out of the users and would like to convey to the users, I think that makes sense.
Good points. Anybody have any other comments on that?
I guess I probably have one comment regarding the maintenance run-ups. I mean, I think it should be when practical, because, you know, we're obviously performing maintenance, and we're not going to pack up all our tools and bring them to the other side of the airport. So the ramp in front of the maintenance hangar, we have to do maintenance on the aircraft. So I would say, you know, looking at the map, I understand why you put it in that location, but if you actually just, where the maintenance hangar is, it's still the same distance south, as far south as the place you selected. And the hangar provides a great deal of a sound barrier to the north. So, I mean, personally, I think our ramp is probably a very good location to do run-ups, because, you know, where the hangar is, you got that great big huge hangar, and it keeps the sound going to the south towards farms.
Mm-hmm.
How often do maintenance run-ups happen?
It's not that often, but it's every single annual, every 100 hour. So you bring the airplane out without the cowl, you do a run-up on the engine. Okay, you have to have your tools there, you're checking timing, you're doing different things. It averages 10, 15 minutes, and then you cowl up the airplane. So it's very impractical to perform that work on the other side of the runway on a taxiway. So I guess I don't think it's practical from a maintenance perspective.
Would an alternative location be on the north side?
Yeah, our ramp, effectively, if you took your purple box and you just put it towards the center of the field, right where our maintenance hangar is, it's actually the exact same distance south. There's no gain, there's no net gain to put it over on the other side. I guess I personally don't understand why it's there.
I'd like to make a very practical point. My hangar partners do a fair amount of work. And to Adam's point, the hangars can be a block for noise. So there's been a number of times where on Mike Lane, there's twin engine there, two of them. Cowling's off, toolboxes are there. Just, I'm going to tell you straight up, they're not going to taxi that airplane across the field, put the toolboxes in a pickup truck, tweak it, put it back together, and drive it back. They're going to go open up the hangar door, work on the plane, do a run-up, and take care of problems. So I think, back to the title, best practices, yes. Big part of this is we're dealing with humans in reality. It's just not going to change. I think your mechanics are going to pop the door, do a run-up right by your hangar, and I think the guys I'm referring to who are very skilled people, they don't run planes longer than they need to, but it would be just a huge problem to move all the way across the field with all the equipment and then come back. I think it's impractical.
You know, to put this in perspective, The average person flies 50 to 60 hours a year. Okay, they have one annual performed. So all of the GA people that own aircraft out there, there's typically 1 to 2 maintenance run-ups annually on their aircraft for 5 minutes. So, and it's no louder than the run-up before you take off. Actually, less so. On the maintenance side, you know, our flight school, we're probably putting 1,100 hours on our aircraft, so we're doing it 11 times 5. So we're doing 55, you know, maintenance run-ups a year. And once again, they're no longer or louder than the run-off before you take off. So, I mean, it's a very, very small number. And, you know, if you look at the number of operations, 8,000 operations, that's 8,000 run-ups. And during that time frame, there was probably 10 maintenance run-ups on the field, you know. So it's something that we're addressing. I get that, I understand that, but I don't know if it's even needed.
Just to piggyback on that, in terms of all the reliever airports, we're the quietest. We have the fewest complaints, and the complaints have always been airborne, not ground-based. I think that's something to be considered also. Secondary thought to that is there's some good points in here. I'm curious to know how it would be communicated to the field. If everyone would get a copy, put it in the door, if it's at, you know, the FBO, or just what the mechanism would be.
I just have a quick question as well. What does decision-making process was used to put your maintenance run-up at this particular location where it is currently listed on the map?
Well, I think, you know, this plan, it did have a maintenance run-up in there to the south side of the runway in the taxiway that now is being used by more aircraft than previously were there originally. So that's why we kind of just shifted it out into an actual run-up area for the runway. But, and I understand all of your points. I was going to make a comment similar to Mr. Wolbert's, but with personal tenants doing maintenance on their own aircraft, where should they go? Can they go to the front of the maintenance hangar if needed, or do their neighbors, are speaking to the other tenants in the room, are you bothered by a neighbor of yours doing a maintenance run-up at all? I mean,
Maintenance run-ups on small planes like ours are really short. In fact, it's not good to run them very long because the engines aren't being cooled properly if the cowlings are off.
Yeah.
So, I mean, whenever I've done a run-up on my plane after an annual inspection or any kind of work, it's at most a minute at most. You're just looking to make sure pressure comes up on the oil or something, and everything all looks good, and then you shut it down. Don't let it heat up.
okay.
Yeah, I think when you look at, in the maintenance run-up section, you talk about run-ups in excess of 5 minutes, and like Mr. Moynihan has said, most of the run-ups that we're talking about, and I think the panel is addressing, fits within that 5 minutes. I know where I work at the Fleming Airport, occasionally we will have run-ups of airplane that we've recently re-rigged, especially a turboprop airplane, that we do not want to do on the ramp, and we'll move out to an area that's more convenient for all of the other users of the airport. And I think that's what you're trying to get at here, is something that's going to be an extended run-up period, so you're not tying up a run-up pad and blocking other people's access to the runway. So I support what you have here, and I believe, listening to the discussion, for the most part, the 5-minute run-ups are not what you're concerned about and addressing, and I think that's what the majority of people are seeing here.
Would it be possible, like in that section A, 3A, it says conduct all engine tests and maintenance run-ups, to conduct extended engine tests and maintenance run-ups in excess of 5 minutes, only in a designated area, and leave the rest to the people's discretion?
Certainly, we can make that change.
Yeah, that makes, one comment I got, a lot of times when you see this, it's for the transients that may come in that don't know where they can do things.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of telling them, okay, this is the best practice, which we just discussed, to go over there to do it. So you're not blowing all the sand at everybody's hangar and, painting all the cars in the parking lot with sand and stuff like that. So it's more of a advisory, I think, than it is mandatory. But I do agree with getting rid of maybe all, because that really kind of says you will do instead of you should do.
I can make that change from all to extended.
All right, so any other comments on that? What I'm hearing so far, just from the conversation, is there's a strong preference for the title to be noise abatement best practices. And for that section 3A, replacing conduct all engine tests to conduct extended engine tests. And was there anything else? I think that covered it.
I had a couple others, if you'd indulge me. In section 1, the takeoff and approach, section D, we talk about when aircraft departing with variable pitch propellers reduce manifold pressure and engine RPM. Manifold pressure does not contribute to noise, engine RPM does. So I would remove the manifold pressure reference in there. A general comment in section 2, traffic pattern, section C talks about keeping the traffic pattern legs as short as possible. I think we also intend to be the downwind, how far we're spaced from the runway. One of the things operating at Airlake that I have noticed recently is the traffic pattern size can grow and grow and grow. So I think this is important for noise abatement. I think it's also important for the efficiency of aircraft operations at the airports. I think it's something that we need to emphasize and share with all of the users of the airport to keep the airport traffic pattern to a size recommended by the FAA. And then the last one that I had, Jennifer, was in section 5, nighttime operations. Point A, avoid operating aircraft, is redundant with the last sentence of the preamble. And section C, avoiding intersection takeoffs and stop and go, is redundant with section 2D of the document. So I just wanted to point those out if you want to make changes.
Could you repeat the last one?
In section 5, nighttime operations, point C, avoid intersection takeoffs and stop and go, is redundant with section 2D, where we're talking about that for all operations, daytime and nighttime.
If I can add one clarifying question. 5D, you have avoid low-level flyovers of the airport. Are you addressing like shooting missed approaches? Or what does that entail?
It would be missed approaches, or it would be an approach where you're coming in and doing your flyover and then entering the pattern and landing.
Like an overhead? Like an overhead approach? Is that what they're thinking of?
I don't know. That's why I'm asking.
Yes.
I don't know if it does that.
Question, someone that's not a pilot. What's a stop and go? I know what a touch and go is. What's a stop and go?
So stop and go is where you would land the airplane, come to a full stop, and then commence another takeoff.
Okay.
So at nighttime, when we are working on our currency, the FAA says to be current at night, we have to do a landing to a full stop. So this is saying what we don't want pilots to do is land the airplane, stop in the middle of the runway, and then start another takeoff roll. We'd prefer them to go back to the beginning of the runway and get airborne again.
Okay, great, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, any other comments or suggestions? We've done some pretty heavy work in this document here, but I think that's good. Did you have one?
Did I understand the answer to 5D is that is a missed approach not to do that?
That was the intent of my question. I wasn't sure what low-level pass meant, because if you're doing currency or instrument currency and you're doing a missed approach, you're going to have to do a low-level pass.
It has more to do with a low approach, so not necessarily landing. A missed approach would be considered an emergency situation. But but if it's not an emergency situation, we would prefer that that not happen. So that it's the difference between a low approach versus a missed approach would be have that emergency component in it. It's also when you pass over the airport and then enter the flight pattern or enter the traffic pattern, we would prefer that pilots not do the overhead approach onto the runway. We would prefer that they would enter the pattern maybe on a 45 to the downwind leg or something like that instead of the overhead. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. I'm not understanding the why of it. If you come in and you're above, well clear of the pattern altitude, and you do a teardrop entry into the 45, I do that a lot. Not here, but other airports. I don't understand the downside to that.
It's merely reducing the operation at non-approach power settings.
Okay, so I'm just trying to visualize it. I'm coming in from the north. You're thinking I should go south over Chubb Lake, come back up, then a 45 into the downwind for a 3-0, rather than going overhead, teardrop to a 45?
Yes, that's exactly right. That would be a preference, but again, this is a voluntary document, and what we're trying to achieve is to have fewer aircraft operating at the airport with patterns or legs that they don't need to operate. If there's a way to reduce the amount of time and engine setting and noise that's resulting from those things, that's the objective. And certainly want you to operate your aircraft safely and not interfere with the safe operation of your aircraft. But if there's a way to avoid an overhead approach, the idea is to reduce that excess path over the airport at a power setting that would not be an approach power setting.
Yeah, I understand your intent, but I think the process is wrong, because you're actually going to fly a longer leg. If I come in, and the pilot guys can help me with this, you come in northbound, teardrop to a 45 downwind, my tack time is going to be a lot less than it would be if I go Chubb Lake, fly back up 45 downwind in. And if I do the teardrop, I'm over fields, and then you have the factory stuff there. You know, what are those buildings? Amazon or whatever it is. They're over non-residential by doing the teardrop. If I go around the east side, come down and come back up, now I'm actually over homes. So I understand your intent. I just think the methodology is not practical.
Probably also be at a reduced power setting if you're doing that, because you're reduced power setting, not high power setting. If you're coming down at the same time.
My little plane doesn't have that option.
Yeah, overhead, you're going to be, pretty much glide.
What if we just stated?
I agree with you.
What if we just state avoid unnecessary low-level approaches at the airport?
I think that the low level, this whole discussion has been different than the way I read this initially, because I read it as something below traffic pattern altitude. And I excluded missed approaches from that in my mind when I read it, because that is typically executed and you're climbing out over the airport.
Because if we're at or above traffic pattern,
I wouldn't
small
consider that
piston,
a
we're 1,000 feet. Yeah, that's not 200 feet.
The idea was to sneak into the airport and sneak out of the airport and reduce the amount of time that you're in the air and at power settings that are not approach power settings. I'm happy to make the change to avoid unnecessary low-level flyovers.
Yeah, that makes unnecessary makes sense.
Better sense.
Thank you for that feedback.
Yeah, great feedback. Any other comments or questions on this? And I'm starting to get a sense that there's a lot of changes in here. And so in terms of looking for approval, is this something that we could get a new draft and look at the next meeting, or is this something that the timeliness requires us to do an approval right now?
The timeliness is important because the sooner we can finalize this, then the sooner we can create that Flying Neighborly Guide and publish it. And I didn't get a chance to address your question about distribution, but Commissioner Eilers, we would mail this out to tenants on the airport, but we would also like to put this electronically into the ForeFlight tool that's being used by the pilots when they're doing their navigation work and their flight planning work. So ideally, it would be great to move forward with this today because this group would not meet again until September. And my quote-unquote flying season is now past us. So if you would like, I can review what my understanding is.
That's what I was going to ask you to do. I was going to ask you to review the changes that we discussed and that would be made to the document. Then once you do that, we'll just look for a motion to approve that in a second.
Okay. We're going to change the title to Noise Abatement Best Practices. We are going to Section 2C. I'm going to add a note for keep traffic pattern lengths as short as possible and close to the airport without risking safety. And the intent is to reduce noise and increase efficiency as recommended by the FAA. The Section 3A, conduct extended engine tests and maintenance run-ups in excess of 5 minutes only in a designated area. See map. The map does show a purple box. That box is going to remain where that box is located now. In Section 5, we will remove A, and we will remove C. We will modify D to say avoid unnecessary low-level flyovers at the airport. So that section will just have an A, B, and C in the end. I'm sorry, we'll only have an A and a B. We're removing 2 of the bullet points in that section.
Excellent, thank you.
That makes sense.
Okay, does anyone wish to make a motion to approve this?
Sure. Motion to approve as defined by Jennifer.
Recommended changes.
Second?
I will second.
All right, so we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
A friendly amendment, a motion to approve it with the recommended changes.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
And, all right, so we have that motion, we have it seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right.
Mr. Chair, can we confirm it was Commissioner Eilers who made the motion? And, no? Oh, the first?
Commissioner Walter.
Oh, I'm sorry. Commissioner Wolbert, and then the second was Adam.
Adam,
Forster.
correct.
Okay.
All right.
Thank
And
you.
Jennifer, I have to leave. I have another commitment. I will be turning the meeting over to my co-chair, Mr. Fitzhenry, and I will leave it in your capable hands, sir.
Okay.
All right.
Okay, after all that fun discussion, are we on item number 9 now? Okay, let's move to item number 9.
Okay, so the Airport 101 and tour discussion for the commissioners. We wanted to kind of give you guys an option and then ultimately have you guys discuss and come up with a plan moving forward. What I'd recommend is offering a tour of the Airlake Airport, either both before and after the next commission meeting in September for any commissioner that would like to take part in that. And then during that meeting, having an agenda item with an Airport 101 kind of familiarization course as part of that. And then moving forward from there, and any new commissioners at the 2-year timeline or, in the middle of a term, if if anybody has to step down for a reason and a new commissioner take over that spot, to offer that as a one-on-one with myself, so that prior to their first meeting on this advisory commission, they've already taken part in an Airport 101 and learned a little bit more about the airport. Familiarization can go a long ways. So that would be my recommendation. Open up for discussion.
I just did this yesterday, and I learned a ton. Even though I've been to the airport before, I learned a lot about, I got to hear the radio, and Sam's a great tour guide, and I highly recommend it to anybody that's not familiar with airports in general, and then just learn about the one that you live next to.
Yeah, I would agree. Sam, are you thinking you'd have like a handout or something like that? Part of my thought was, I've done this with school kids. Same thing. What's an airport? A runway is a chunk of concrete, but it has two numbers, right? 3012. How can you have two runways on the same piece of concrete? So I don't know if you're going to have like a little take-home packet with something like that image that we have on the board here with a nice aerial view that shows some of the acronyms. What's an FBO?
Well,
things like that. So it can be, if you're a non-flyer and you walk into this, it can be a fire hose of information. You'll retain 10% of it, and the rest is going to be gone the next day. So just a suggestion.
yeah, and I guess what I had thought about was a PowerPoint presentation during the meeting, and that PowerPoint presentation would kind of become a take-home material, and then in addition to that, the hands-on tour, I think, yeah, that would be enough.
Yeah, I think it'd be invaluable. The other is the last discussion we just had. Unless you're a pilot, and if you're a pilot, you can visualize what we're talking about with a pattern, teardrop, entry, 45 to downwind, all of that. If you don't know what that is, it's probably a foreign language. So it's hard to have engagement with the board unless you're educated with the basic functionality of how an uncontrolled airport works.
Yep.
I think
agree.
It's great you're doing it.
I got a comment. I know you got September 12th on it, but most of us have been through it. Would it be nice if we could just recommend, or they could talk to you about doing that tour? Because I'm not sure all of us need to go on it, if you get what I'm saying. We've been there, especially the pilots, I'm probably in and out of there, 3 times a day. But for those that might, why you don't have to wait till September 12th. Recommend that they are, the manager probably would do that tour, or they would be somebody that could give them that tour of the airport when they come in, because it's important to know how that airport works before you get here. I agree with that. And the 101, isn't that online? Is that a YouTube?
Not the one I'm thinking of. I think we potentially we can take that back and
if I want to know about Airlake, I punch it, and you got a great presentation. Just has to be narrated.
Mm-hmm.
Make it available, and that way it's to them sooner.
Right. Yeah, I'm definitely open for sooner than the 12th if that's what the commission decides here.
I'm not saying don't do it then, but I'd like to see it, they can get it easier, faster.
Right.
Mr. Chair, we do have some comments from Michelle Ross, who's joining the meeting remotely. Michelle, do you want to say what you have to say?
Yeah, absolutely. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Yeah, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So, yep, I am the manager for community relations at the Metropolitan Airports Commission. I just wanted to let you know that, as Jennifer mentioned, we do have some airport construction at MSP, and so we are trying to coordinate the timing of the tour to best accommodate staff capacity. We have a little bit of a limited capacity on our team. We've had some movement within the team, and we have, like I said, this pretty impactful construction that's ongoing at MSP. And so we were trying to be considerate of the timing of the tour to account for that as well.
Okay, I understand.
I'm open to questions.
Yeah, I
about
understand
that.
her comment. I don't know if any other members got it. I mean, you could still keep that for those that might need it, you know, on the 12th, if they want to meet with more MAC staff. But I like the idea of having it available too, maybe on a YouTube or whatever, that it'd be great for the flight schools to say, okay, look at this before you go flying and see what's going on, so you know what's going on at Airlake. And maybe you could put a bit in there about language they use on the radio.
You could become a YouTube star.
Chair, if I could note, we do have quite a few Airport 101 presentations on YouTube, but they're a little bit more geared toward MSP. We do have a general aviation video on YouTube, but again, a lot of the materials that we have prepared are kind of what we have prepared at this time, and we can try and accommodate as best as possible, and we will definitely take that into consideration if we're able to provide additional resources.
Okay, and it might be as simple as if he does the next 101, we tape it or video it.
And I think it's important that it be somewhat catered to Airlake, because if you're looking at what's going on at MSP, it's going to be completely different because it's a completely different aircraft. And if you could, on your tours, if you could also arrange for somebody to be doing a run-up, like you did. Sorry, I never knew they did that.
I think your comment about getting to hear the radio and see the radio, that brings you into, your question about what's a stop and go versus a touch and go versus,
Right.
Addressing those things and sharing those things. I think the one-on-one aspect or the one on a group of people personalizes it more than a YouTube video.
Yeah,
So I don't know if we answered your question or if we gave you comments, but
give you more work.
yeah. Are you looking for a recommendation, or do you understand what we've said?
We're really open to how the group would like to proceed. And if this September 12th plan is not really what works best for the group, we're certainly able to make a different plan. So I think we can take back what you've suggested, and we can think about how we want to move forward with that, unless you do have a specific recommendation that you would like us to follow. I think what we'll do is go back and figure out how we want to handle what we do on the agenda for September 12th. And of course, when we meet with the leadership, the co-chairs and MAC staff usually meet to plan the agenda for each one of these ALAC meetings, and so we certainly could present the ideas at the next leadership meeting that you, Chair Fitzhenry, and Chair Bermo would be able to agree with or not.
And I wanted to mention too that we're not forgetting that there's 6 alternates that are
Right.
part of this too that should also be included in the invite there. So quite a few people I think still need to get some familiarization with the airport as well.
Okay, I get what you're saying, and also it might be opportunity for other council members here or Farmington or whatever city to get in there. You might want to limit it. I know you don't have a 80 passenger bus to do this, but so does anybody have any recommendation they wish to have? Or if we do it prior to the meeting, I think that doesn't give you enough time or opportunity. So if we were to do it at a meeting, would that be the only meeting we would have in September? Or?
No, this group typically meets quarterly. We hold a cadence of the second Thursday of the quarterly meeting, so it would be September, and then after September it would be December, and then March would be the next meeting, and June. But that is very flexible based on you all and how the membership would prefer to hold those meetings. Therefore, if a special meeting is needed, the co-chairs have the prerogative to schedule a special meeting. If you'd like to just, have this conducted on a one-on-one basis, that's perfectly fine as well. We're really here to serve all of you.
Okay. Do we have any need to have, for us, one of these? My suggestion would be, is that if you do this, we don't conduct it during our meetings, so we don't have our business disrupted, if you want to call it that, but have this available to whomever. You're going to have to put a cap on it, who really would like this meeting. It could be a concerned citizen, somebody that just moved in, or, you might even invite some realtors so they can talk about what's going on in the neighborhood to people, about, should I buy a home here in this area? So that would be my recommendation, I guess.
It sounds like we would just pick an alternative date for this tour, right? Sometime whenever is convenient for you, with a little bit of a runway, no pun intended, for people to put it on their schedule, whatever's convenient for you, yeah.
Is there a showing of here, who's interested in having a tour? Okay. I would suggest that we meet with those individuals specifically and arrange the tour, a very customized tour.
And then they made a good comment. The ones that aren't here tonight are the alternates that may not show up to a meeting. Please invite them.
We will.
Is that clarity now, hopefully? Okay. Are we good to move on?
There is one comment. I think now's a good time to bring it up. Individual online, Christopher Gardner, here representing Met Council, I believe. He said, FYI, Mankato State is in the process of changing the frequency from 123.0, the CTAF frequency. So,
Mankato's not on our frequency.
He said at Ulm at the end of that too. So
Yeah, because they are. I will clarify that they are going to get a control tower in Mankato, but they don't affect Airlake other than the quantity that comes out of there. There are just a lot of aircraft. I've heard they purchased 30 aircraft within the last couple of years, so they've increased so much. But yeah, I don't know about the frequency. If Nick, you can nod or not. I don't think they're bothering us on frequency other than the frequency of their flying at airports that are on our frequency. Okay. Yeah, thanks. Anything else? Any more comments online?
no.
Okay. Okay, so go to upcoming events. You want me to just name them, or do you have them? I'll let Jennifer show them, and you can show and tell.
Yeah, so the EAA Chapter 25 is having their Father's Day breakfast on Sunday morning. And we met with him today, one of the planners of the event, and it's still planned to go on on schedule. And a lot of parking is going to be on the south side. They've outlined some areas that aren't wet, and gone over a review of where to park vehicles. And we'll have staff there that Sunday to help monitor that situation as well. So that event.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. It's paid.
And then the Airlake Tenant Barbecue is the following Monday at 4:30 p.m. Invites have been sent out via USPS postcard mail and the news blast online. So excited to see the tenants out for that. We'll be there in full force, cooking hamburgers and brats. So please come. And then Panaprog, July 7th. Is still on schedule, and we're all hoping everything dries out by then.
Pat, is there some things you would like to add to the Panaprog or the EAA breakfast?
I'm part of the Lakeville lines as well, and so yeah, this is our fly-in breakfast. I think it's our number 12th year, if I remember right. When you retire, time goes by a little faster and you forget. But anyway, it's going to be at the Adams Super Hangar down there on the south side. Over the years, we've tweaked and finessed our, done some industrial engineering, and we are now zeroing in on improving our service lines to have no waiting, just walk. And so that's going to be an improvement for this year. The other thing is we're offering tickets online, purchasing online at a discount or at the door, a little bit $2 higher there. So encouraging people to go to the panaprog.org website and purchase your fly-in breakfast tickets. Things that are planned are the Commemorative Air Force is bringing in some of their aircraft. We have some helicopters that are planning to be there, weather dependent. The MAC is going to have some equipment on display for the kids to climb around and paint and have a good time with. It's always been a hit, every place they've ever done it. There's going to be several aviation-related booths there. Of course, Aloft Flight School will be there. There's the EAA chapter will have a booth there talking about what they do, as well as their Young Eagle program, which are the free flights for kids that occur down there on the third Saturday every month. The plan is to have one of the business jets open for viewing, so they can walk in and look and see not get inside, but look through the door and see what it's like to have a business jet or to look at one. So I guess it's going to be from 7:30 to 11:30. And yes, we're praying for still dry weather because we have, last year we had about 550 or 600 cars parked in that area that's now pretty darn wet. So we're hoping that it dries out for our event. Anyway, are there any questions?
Well, Pat, could you be specific on the date at the airport?
Oh, sorry. Yes, it's the 7th of July, 7:30 to 11:30. The other thing that I should mention too is since we're on the south side and the parking is quite a ways, we're making some big improvements on shuttling people from the far parking area to the event. We've contracted with a company that has a people mover trailer. It's going to be pulled by a truck. So we're doing what we can to make it even more family friendly than it's been. So.
Thank you. Okay, I think we covered the events, and then member comments. I'll just go around, start with Adam. Anybody have any comments they want to interject now?
I don't.
Okay. Anybody?
None here?
Okay. I have none.
I talked plenty.
Anything online that we need to check with them? Any members online? Okay, hearing none, we'll move on to announcements.
None from me.
Okay, we'll review the schedule and the next meeting September 12th, depending on what we do with the tour and that, and then December 12th, 2024. And if we have nothing else, I say we're adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Go.